Hey YouTube, Kiritwick here, bringing you all an update to my Cyberdark Yugioh deck profile for January 2024. It's been a good couple years since my last pure Cyberdark deck profile. I, a while ago, tried doing like a mix between Cyberdarks and Cyberdragons to give more of a Zane vibe feel for a deck profile, but we're going back to just working fully focused on the Cyberdark deck using all of the different forms of the Cyberdark monsters, which then equip on different dragon type monsters, some of them being Cyberdark monsters as well, onto your monsters to gain additional attack boosts and even being able to go into some bigger boss monsters like Cyberdark and Dragon. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For our main go-to Cyberdark monsters, we run one copy of each Cyberdark Horn, Edge, and Keel. When all of them are normal summon, you can target a level 3 or lower dragon monster in your graveyard, equip that dragon monster to this card. It gains attack equal to the original attack of the monster equipped by this effect, and if this card attacks defense, you inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent, and also protection from each of them. So Horn has the piercing battle damage, Edge can attack directly, and you half the battle damage, and then with Cyberdark Keel, if it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you inflict 300 damage to your opponent. So while I would say Keel is the weakest and Edge is one of the better ones hitting for that direct damage, you still only need the one of copies of each of the cards because they're easily searchable in the deck. One of the searchers we run is Cyberdark Cannon, which we are also running 3 copies of this card. When it's sent to the graveyard while equipped to a monster, you can draw 1 card. You can only use this effect of Cannon once per turn, so if you use it to protect your other Cyberdark monsters, you'll get that draw power. And you can discard this card to add 1 machine Cyberdark monster from your deck to your hand. So this can add the Cyberdark monsters I mentioned before. For this card, and during damage calc, if a monster equipped with this card battles, you can send 1 monster from your deck to the graveyard, setting up other dragon monsters for you to equip with your other Cyberdark cards, including cards like Cyberdark Claw. When it's sent, you can target a Cyberdark monster in your graveyard, add it back to your hand. So instead of the draw power like Cannon, you get more of the recycle power with this card, and you can discard it to add a Cyberdark spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And during damage calc, if a monster equipped with this card battles, you can send 1 monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. So being able to send extra deck monsters can help to set up some other cards to then use with our other Cyberdark monsters to then equip onto those cards, being able to equip them with cards like Cyber Darkness Dragon, but you also have the power to send some other extra deck cards depending on which ones you want to send, like Elder Entity, to then be able to destroy cards your opponent may control. And I also run 2 copies of Cyberdark Chimera. This could potentially be a 3 of. If I were to do so, I'll show you what you can cut back on to run a 3rd copy of this card. You can discard 1 spell or trap to add 1 power bond from your deck to your hand. You can only use dragon or machine cyber monsters as fusion material this turn. Also, once when you fusion summon this turn, you can also banish monsters from your graveyard as material. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can send 1 Cyberdark monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different name from the cards in your graveyard, setting up different monsters, but also being able to utilize those cards for a more powered up power bond, being able to have your setup in your graveyard for some of the other monsters that you may send off of your other Cyberdark cards from the extra deck to the graveyard as well, to then use for the banish to summon out with your power bond, your Cyberdark and Dragon, needing Cyberdark Dragon and Cyber and Dragon to make it. I also run the 1 copy of Cyber Dragon and the 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core. Just more search power, having the Cyber search power off of Core, making it one of your better non-Cyberdark monsters to summon out onto the field. Having 400 attack, it's also a machine duplication target. And then Cyber Dragon having just one of the needed names, because then this card also counts as Cyber Dragon, so you could potentially use them with the Cyber and Dragon to summon out onto the field as well. And then I also run the 1 attachment Cybern and the 1 Dragon Buster, the Destruction Sword. For these cards, your Dragon Buster, while this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon this card, and also with it, your opponent can special summon monsters from the extra deck. So with this card, while it's equipped to a monster, you've locked your opponent out of the extra deck. So a great card to also send from the main deck to the graveyard to then equip this Dragon monster onto one of your Cyberdark monsters. And attachment Cybern, being able to target a dragon or machine monster you control and equip this card from your hand or field to it, giving an additional 600 attack, and if it's sent to the graveyard while equipped, you can target 1 other dragon or machine monster in your graveyard and special summon it, just continuing those resources for you to use as well. With the last of the main deck monsters, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, just a small hand trap lineup to use. A lot of the times you just need that graveyard setup, and then the 1 Cyberdark monster to then summon out and equip with your needed dragon monster as well. And then moving on now to the spells, I run 3 copies of Cyberdark Realm. When this card is activated, you can add 1 Cyberdark monster from your deck to your hand with a different name from cards in your graveyard. During your main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 Cyberdark monster. You can only use the previous effect of Realm once per turn. If you equip a monster from your graveyard by the effect of a Cyberdark monster, you can activate the effect when it was normal special summon. You can equip from your opponent's graveyard instead. Giving you access to your opponent's monsters is quite scary. Having that additional normal summon means you can use your multiple Cyberdark monsters as well for any different equips as long as you have those cards to use, and then also just benefiting from the additional special summon power of Realm as well. I also run 3 copies of Cybernetic Horizon. It's always treated as a Cyberdark card, being another searcher for your Cyberdark spell and traps off of cards like Cyberdark Claw, and you can send 2 dragon and or machine cyber monsters with different attributes to the graveyard, 2, 1 of each from hand or deck, and add 1 dragon or machine cyber monster from your deck to your hand. If you do send 1 machine cyber fusion monster from your extract to the graveyard, you can activate 1 Cybernetic Horizon per turn. You cannot special summon monsters from the extract the turn you activate this, except for machine monsters, but another way to set up the Cyber End Dragon in your graveyard for you to then use for the Banish Fusion play to then summon out your Cyber End Dark Dragon. And then also 3 copies of Machine Duplication. You just have the special summon power. With this card, it's mostly meant for Cyber Dragon Core. I do run the 3. If you wanted to reduce the number of this card, you can always increase the other numbers that I mentioned before, adding up your Cyberdark Chimera to a third of copy by taking down Machine Duplication, but just being able to summon out Core, getting a search, then summoning out 2 additional ones, getting more searches for your cyber spells, makes use for all the 1-ofs we run in the deck that this card can add to your hand, depending on which one you need. I also run the 2 copies of Power Bond. It's used to summon out Cyber and Darkness Dragon, so depending on what fusion play you may want to go to, you have plenty of options for Power Bond as well. And also 1 copy of Cyberdark Inferno for the search power and protection of your Cyberdark monsters on the field. The recycle power if your monster loses its equip to then return to your hand to then summon again. 1 Cyberload Fusion is just another added fusion summon play, as well as another search off of your Cyber Dragon Core. 1 Overload Fusion to make use of the graveyard setup for the banish if you don't have your Cyberdark Chimera to use for its banish cost instead. And then also the 1 fusion deployment, just being able to reveal a fusion monster and get that search gives us access to a wide variety, including Cyber Dragon and many of the other Cyberdark monsters as well. To finish off these spells, 2 copies of Pot of Prosperity. There may be that 1 specific extract monster that you can just banish for the cost of this card to then go for some of the more proper cards you need for any of your combos, and 1 copy of Call by the Grave, just so you can get your searches off and not be hand trapped by your opponent as well, thanks to this card stopping it, hopefully when you have the 1-of in your hand. And then for the traps, the only trap I run is 2 copies of Cyberdark Invasion. Once per turn, you can activate 1 of these effects. Target 1 Cyberdark effect monster you control. Equip 1 dragon or machine monster from either graveyard to it as an equip spell that gives it 1,000 attack. And send 1 equip card you control to do a machine monster to the graveyard to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So either you can make use of the one you already have, but then the following turn activate the effect, activating 1 of these effects, and then getting that additional card to then boost up the attack of your monster as well. And for the extra deck, I run 2 copies of Cyberdark End Dragon. While it probably won't be summoned as often twice, I wanted to test it out just to see if we have the fusion power and then the banish option to use it as well, depending on the fusion play we go for. And when you can also special summon it by tributing a level 10 or lower Cyberdark fusion monster equipped with Cyber End Dragon. So the first one could potentially be tributed out, and then using the graveyard plays, be able to get 2 out onto the field as well. It's unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. Once per turn, you can equip 1 monster from either graveyard to this card, and it gains attack equal to the number of times each battle phase up to the cards equipped to it. Having a 5,000 multiple attack monster is definitely quite scary, but then being able to take any monster even from your opponent's graveyard to equip onto it as well. Also, the 1 copy of Cyber Darkness Dragon, more of a bigger Cyberdark fusion to get out. Cyberdark Dragon needing the specifics to summon this card out. Cyber End Dragon needed for many of our graveyard setup, which we can send with our other Cyberdark monsters. The 1 Chimera Tech Over Dragon, needing a Cyber Dragon and more machine monsters to summon it out as well, with plenty of machines we run in the deck, and then the Cyber Dragon we run also. And lastly, 1 Cyber Eternity Dragon, just another fusion option with cards like Cyberload Fusion, with our only other fusion monster being the 1 Elder Entity, as I mentioned before, as a send of cost to then use to destroy one of your opponent's cards. And for the Link monsters, 1 copy of Cyber Dragon Seeger, 1 copy of Protector Whelp is another way to set up the Buster Whelp if you just need an easy link 2 to go into, 1 Relinquished Anima, 1 Barricade Board Blocker, 1 SP Little Knight, 1 IP Masquerena, and the 1 Nightmare Unicorn to finish off the rest of the extra deck for the Link monsters. A lot of them also will be just the cost for Pot of Prosperity to banish off of as well. And as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as I mentioned before, your search power, so being able just to open up cards like your Cyberdark Realm, activating this card, and then being able to add a Cyberdark monster means you can then add your Cyberdark Cannon, discarding Cannon to search your one-ofs, being your other Cyberdark monsters. You can then add that card, normal summon it out onto the field, then use it to equip on your Cyberdark Cannon. You now have a monster with the additional attack of that monster, and then depending on the Cyberdark monster you searched, a lot of the times you want to go for Edge because it has that direct attack power if you went second against your opponent, being able to swing with this card as well. And if it battles, you can send 1 monster from your deck to the graveyard, so you can use Cyberdark Cannon to then send and set up all those other monsters I mentioned, including cards like Destructor, Buster, the Dragon Whelp, to the graveyard to then use as another re-equip for another normal summon that you may want to go for, and then lock your opponent out of the extra deck with that. For your fusion plays, a lot can be done with the Cyberdark Chimera. The graveyard setup that the other ones mentioned before was Cyberdark Cannon, setting up more and more Cyberdark monsters in the graveyard. But if you have your Cyberdark Chimera, just by discarding 1 spell or trap, depending on that, it can give you one of the extras you have, like Machine Duplication, to then add your monster, being the fusion spell Power Bond, from your deck to your hand as well. Being able to use those graveyard cards as well, as long as you have enough set up, depending on the cards you go for. You can then use the banish cost from Chimera from your field and or graveyard to go for some of the bigger monsters, including cards like Chimera Tech Overdragon if you happen to have the Cyber Dragon as well, since you can also use the cards from your hand depending on which ones you may have in your hand to use as well. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.